Hello everyone, and welcome back to Storytime with Mr. Jerome, where we tell stories that matter. As it's Friday, we'll be reading from the Jesus Storybook Bible, written by Sally Lloyd-Jones. Parents, there's a link in the description to follow if you want to purchase a copy for yourselves. We are following in the story of the children of Israel, God's chosen people, and we're picking up a little while after Joshua has brought them into the promised land. And now they've been living there for a while, and they're wanting to try something new. They're wanting to change things up a little bit, and we'll read more about that change in today's story, which is titled The Teeny-Weenie True King. Let's read together.
The Teeny-Weenie True King. God's people had a new land. Now they wanted a king. But God is your king, Samuel told them. He is the one who looks after you best. We want a real king, they said, one we can see. God knew that a king might not be kind to his people or look after them as well as he would. But God's people didn't care. They wanted a king and they wanted him now. So God gave them a king. He was called Saul, and he seemed like a good king at first. But he became proud and stopped listening to God. He didn't obey God or love God with his whole heart. Saul can't help me with my plan, God said. I need a king who loves me and will teach my people to love me. I need a true king. God had just the one in mind. Go to Bethlehem, God told Samuel. You'll find the new king there. Samuel's job was to listen to God and tell people what God said. So Samuel went to the little town of Bethlehem. God told Samuel to go to Jesse's house. God was going to choose one of Jesse's sons to be the new king. Jesse had 7 strong sons. Now, in those days, if you were going to be the king, you didn't have to be the richest or the cleverest, although that was always nice. You had to look like a king, which meant you had to be the tallest and the strongest, so you could carry the longest swords and biggest armor and defeat everyone. And it didn't hurt to be handsome either. Samuel asked Jesse to bring him each son in turn. So Jesse brought the oldest, tallest, strongest son. This must be the new king, Samuel thought. He looks like a king. But God didn't choose him. You're thinking about what he looks like on the outside, God told Samuel, but I am looking at his heart, what he's like on the inside. So Jesse showed Samuel his next oldest, tallest, strongest son. God didn't choose him either. In fact, God didn't choose any of the 7 sons. Samuel said, "Is that all?" Jesse laughed. "Oh, well, there's the youngest one, but he's just the weakling of the family. He's only teeny." "Bring him," said Samuel. Jesse's youngest son came running up, and God spoke quietly to Samuel. "This is the one." His name was David. "He has a heart like mine," God said. "It is full of love. He will help me with my secret rescue plan, and one of his children's children's children will be the king, and that king will rule the world forever." Samuel anointed David's head with oil, which was a special way to show that you are God's chosen king. "You will be the new king one day," Samuel told him. And sure enough, when he grew up, David became king. God chose David to be king because God was getting his people ready for an even greater king who was coming. Once again, God would say, "Go to Bethlehem. You'll find the new king there." And there, one starry night in Bethlehem, in the town of David, 3 wise men would find him.
Are you the biggest and strongest person in your family? I know I'm not. And I'm sure while you are probably very strong, very big, your mommy and daddy and maybe your brothers and sisters might be bigger than you or stronger than you. And I know that can be frustrating sometimes to see your family members doing something so easily that you can't do because you're not as big as they are or you're not as strong as they are. But that's okay, because this story, the story of David, tells us that we don't have to be the biggest or the strongest people for God to choose us and love us. David was not the biggest or strongest person in his family. In fact, he was the smallest and the weakest. And God still chose him to be king. So let's remember that even though we may not be the biggest or the strongest people, God can still use us to do amazing things. Now, speaking of kings, it's time for our Learning Minute.
Samuel anointed David to be the king, even though he was very young. But did you know that such things happened all the time? Many young boys and girls were born into royal families, and they grew up knowing that they would become kings and queens one day. These royal young boys were called princes, and the royal young girls were called princesses. The princes would have grown up learning about what it would take to become a king. They would have had special teachers to help them learn to ride horses, fight, and rule wisely. The princesses would have had teachers to instruct them in how to be the best queens possible by being kind, clever, and charming. Here's a question for you to discuss with your parents. What do you think it would be like to be a prince or a princess?
I hope you enjoyed that Learning Minute, and I hope you enjoyed today's story. Join us again this Monday at 7 p.m. for another story that matters. Until then, be safe, have a great day, don't forget to like and subscribe, and goodbye.